Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be giving you guys some recommendations for biblical fiction. What I want to start doing, I think every other month with this Historical Fiction 101 series, I want to start going down the historical timeline and giving you guys recommendations for certain just periods of time, certain historical events, things like that. So that way I can kind of hit every base of history, and that way if there's a particular time that you yourself enjoy, maybe I can give you some recommendations, or if there's a historical period that you are wanting to get into but you don't know where to start, maybe my recommendations might give you a starting place. So starting off with biblical historical fiction, and I want to stress that I believe all of these recommendations on my list, they are all just general historical fiction, not Christian historical fiction, because I think there's a very big difference between the two. The recommendations that I'm giving you here are downright books that take place during the time period of the Bible, whether that be the Old Testament or the New Testament, or just somewhere in between there. I'm going to be honest, I have actually never read biblical historical fiction, and I don't know why. I was looking through the list that I've come up with, and all these books sound great, so I think myself, I'm going to definitely try and pick up some of these books in the future because they sound really, really good. Where I got this list from, I just went to Goodreads. I typed in like biblical historical fiction, and that kind of gave me this whole like shelf of books that Goodreads recommends, like the highest books from other users, I guess, that have been shelved. So yeah, this is definitely not it. I've just come up with a list of 10 books, and I'll just leave it up to you guys to check them out if you want. The first book I'm going to recommend is The Red Tent by Anita Diamant. And this book takes place during the book of Genesis, and it's about this girl named Dinah, who is the daughter of Jacob. And what this book is primarily about, it's about the Red Tent, like the title suggests. And the Red Tent is basically where all of the women go to tell their stories, and when they have their time of the month, and when they have their babies and stuff. So the Red Tent is very much a book about womanhood, love, and tradition, and Dinah's call to become a midwife later in her life. I actually have The Red Tent pretty high on my list of books to get because I recently watched the mini-series that aired quite a few months ago, and I actually really like the mini-series, so yeah, I highly recommend checking out that mini-series if you're not sure about the book. The next book recommendation is also a book that just recently had a mini-series come out, but I didn't get around to seeing it, and that is The Dove Keepers by Alice Hoffman. And I do think this takes place in the biblical times. I wasn't quite sure if it was or not, but my understanding of the synopsis, it kind of sounds like it does take place in biblical times, so hopefully it is. And The Dove Keepers is about these 4 women and how their stories intertwine and how their paths eventually lead them to the Masada Massacre, which is a massacre I've never even heard of. And this was a massacre where 900 Jews were killed by Roman soldiers. The next book is actually a pretty recent release, I believe, and it's The Tomb by Stephanie Lansom. And this is a retelling of the story of Lazarus, the man who was resurrected by Jesus Christ, and it's told primarily from the point of view of his sister Martha. I definitely have a high interest in that one. There's just something very intriguing about it. And then I'm also hugely intrigued by this next one. It's called Iscariot by Tosca Lee. And this is basically a sort of re-examination of Judas Iscariot, the betrayer of Jesus Christ, and you just get to see his entire life, I guess, before and after he meets Jesus Christ. So yeah, that definitely sounds super intriguing. You know, Judas is notoriously just one of the worst betrayers and villains in history, and I'm very curious if the book will make me actually feel for Judas, which I have a feeling it will. The next set of recommendations I have for you actually come from Orson Scott Card, which I was kind of shocked about because I thought Orson Scott Card was primarily a science fiction writer, so apparently he's wrote some biblical historical fiction. And his series of books are called The Women of Genesis. And some of the women that he focuses on are Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah. I think the list kind of goes on a little bit longer, but yeah, some of the key women of Genesis, it seems. The next recommendation comes from an author that I've only read one book from, but I own a lot of her other books, and it is Mary Called Magdalene by Margaret George. I previously read Margaret George's Helen of Troy, and then I also own her The Memoirs of Cleopatra and Elizabeth I. So yeah, she has one on Mary Magdalene apparently, and I'm surprised I don't have that one, considering that I do like Margaret George from just the one book I've read. So I definitely want to pick that up, and like the title suggests, I think it's kind of a diary format, I want to say, or a memoir of sorts about the life of Mary Magdalene. The next recommendation I have is Eve by Alyssa Elliott. And this is like what the title says, it's about creation's first family, I think primarily focused on Eve. And it's not just about her as a wife and mother, but also just her as a woman, and I guess the trials and tribulations she has to go through before and after her and Adam's banishment from Eden. And that definitely sounds good. I think I've been wanting to pick that one up for a long time now. And then in general, there's just all sorts of books about the women in the Bible. I mean, seriously, the list, when I was on Goodreads, the list just went on and on and on. Just every single sort of woman from the Bible you can imagine who has their own book. There was something called The Legend of Sheba by Tosca Lee, Esther by Angela Hart. And then the last recommendation I have, I even found a book called I Saw from Jerry B. Jenkins. So yeah, that's pretty much it for all the biblical historical fiction that I wanted to share with you guys. I hope this is a good starting place for some of you. It certainly sounds like a good starting place for me. In the comments below, if you have read biblical historical fiction and you have any recommendations, feel free to share them down below because I would love to go check them out. And do any of these recommendations that I just gave you guys, do they sound appealing to you or not? So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you liked this Historical Fiction 101, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.